really needed help. And last meeting, we heard the presentations from all these presenters except Eureka, and Eureka has had a problem getting their engineers together to make a presentation, and they were relying on another funding source, and it fell through. So I do know that Eureka, talking to Doug Booth, the mayor, that they have another portion of sewer repair that needs to take place. So I think you have it in your paperwork that Eureka is for $200,000. In looking at these myself as the Eastern Region, by the way, before I forget it, we are gonna, I think it's been changed that the resolution that you have in your packet is, we're gonna change that length of financing from 60 months to 59 months. And that's on page 8 of the resolution. And the reason for that is that if we stay at 59 months, if we stay below 60, we can borrow the full amount, the $576,923.08. And that is at a one-time 1% fee to the Eastern Region. And of course, this money has to be paid back. This is not what we call free money. And so at this time, in looking at the presentations and what we have before us, I wanted to, with the board's approval, I would like to take Fremont, Pikeville, and Eureka and to group them together for this reason. Fremont and Eureka is on the same sewer system, and of course, Pike was up in the northern part of the county, and we know that there's issues in these three municipalities, and in looking at the other presentations that we have, I don't, in my opinion, this is one commissioner's opinion, I don't see any more need than what I see in these three municipalities as far as need is concerned. And without good sewer and water, without good efficient systems, up in the northern part of the county, these municipalities, their economic development is virtually gone, non-existent, until they can get these under control and get these repairs done. So I wanted to make a motion to the board that the funding for Fremont, Pikeville, and Eureka. Fremont is $305,244.71, and Pikeville is $75,000, and Eureka was $200,000. That is a total of $580,244.71, and it's actually a few dollars over what our 576 is. And I wanted to make a motion at this time before the Board of Commissioners that we use these three, this one project for Fremont, Pikeville, and Eureka to help these municipalities get on their feet and start providing their own way. And I make a motion that we put these on the application to the Eastern Region Board and make these three the priority of the board for this 576. And that's in the form of a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Just a minute, Mr. Bell. I have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? Mr. Bell?
I was just going to ask, what are the other people asking for before we vote? I mean,
You have it. You have it in your on page 7. Page 7.
yeah, I know. I just wanted you to say it out.
Yeah, they're asking, and certainly anyone can ask and make a motion, any commissioner, anyone that's here. But the commissioners are making the decision as to the priority on this. I'm just throwing mine out there for Fremont Pikeville Eureka. If anybody wants to make a different motion, that's fine, but that's where I'm coming from. I'm making the motion for Fremont Pikeville Eureka.
Mr. Pate.
I've been involved with the talks with Eureka and Fremont, and I know the dire situation going on there and the lack of economic development in northern Wayne County. But I do have a question, because I know, we got more, people got more wants than we got money, of course. Are we still pursuing the additional dollars that we might get from the other counties?
As of today, there has not been any information from other counties. If you remember, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, the Eastern Region sent out to the other counties a request that if Wayne County wanted to borrow their funds, that would they let us know. And as of today, the Eastern Region, Sylvia Nesbitt, has not received anyone that was interested in loaning us their part of their money.
It's my understanding from reading newspaper that Morehead City is requesting Carteret County's full share to do something on the Morehead City waterfront.
Greene County's not able either.
And Greene County is trying to borrow some of the money to refinance one of its debts that it believes is within the realm.
Mr. Bale.
The reason I asked the question, because I thought we was going to, since we just had a small pile of money, that we were going to sort of give all of them some, not just 1 or 2 entities.
No, that was never talked about. We were
I said,
gonna
I
sit-
thought that, and said that's what the board thought.
I didn't think that, because you only have so much to go around. We knew from the start that we didn't have enough money to cover all the requests that we had. And that's why I had asked the commissioners to set a priority and make a vote here on who is to be put on the application to the Eastern Region. And this is a recommendation from the motion that I've made.
But you said recommendation from the commission. Which commission? Because I've never been consulted on it. Yeah, I was just wondering, he said the consultant.
The
commissioner will consult.
rules were set 4 or 5 weeks ago when we started looking at the DMV funds. I mean,
But we didn't decide where the money was going to go, that's what I'm saying.
that's what we're doing today. That's the purpose of what we're doing today, is to set the priority.
Mr. Doherty. Then Mr. Kamara.
Mr. Mayo, I understand your concerns, but I'm concerned that we have a limited amount of dollars, and we have got 2 other municipalities that have in fact some request here. And I think it only to be fair that we include these other municipalities as well. And I agree that your totals come up to how much?
$580,244.
Which is even more than what we're going to receive. But what I would ask is that first of all, I did not know we were going to make a decision today on this matter. That's one. Number 2, I would ask that these municipalities go back and look at these requests and see whether or not they recognize we have limited dollars, and that they go back and find a way to possibly curb or trim their request to accommodate all of the municipalities. So we would just, as far as this commission is concerned, I would like to see that all of them have equal abilities, because one requested more than the other does not necessarily, I think in my judgment, give priority to the one that had the larger request. Goldsboro, as an example, is asking for $925,000. But what I would need to know is, out of the $925,000, is there an amount of a matching fund? As an example, is there a $50,000 amount that they would need in its entirety in order to match with another grant that would help them? If we agree to today just pull an arbitrary number out and say, well, let's just allow Goldsboro to have $35,000, that $35,000 may not be any good to them. So I would ask that what we do is to hold off on moving forward with this until we ask the different municipalities to go back and see if they can trim their requests, so we can spread this money out across all of the municipalities. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Marty.
Well, Mr. Doctor has clearly stated part of the position I have, but I would go back and wonder how was it determined that it was going to be done today, and which commissioners had met in some session or decided in some manner that the particular ones that you indicated would get all of the money, and Goldsboro and Mount Olive would be completely cut out. Because if you looked at, I would ask you to go back and look at some timelines on memos and so forth of which municipalities may have indicated that they were interested first, and if you're going to use a first come first served method, that I believe Mount Olive might be right up there in the front end. But having said that, I concur with Mr. Daughtry that I believe that municipalities on record of needing some funds should be given an opportunity to go back and say, I realize I can't get this amount, but this is exactly what I need. And all the municipalities be able to sample some grapes from the vine.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Pate.
I don't know that we can go from first come, first serve. I think we've got to look at most in need. There are certainly municipalities who have much larger fund balances and have received help from this board over the years, and the northern part of the county, frankly, has been left out. And I've just got to put that on record and say it right here. I don't have anything against any municipalities, because I support them all, but you've got to look at most in need. We've got some that are just about completely insolvent, and if they don't get some help and get it pretty quickly, we're going to be taking over their debt at some point in time. So we need to consider that when we're making this decision. Thank you.
Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To answer Mr. Cromartie's comments as far as getting together, I've not gotten together with anyone. All my information has come from that podium, and also September of last year when all the commissioners met with the municipalities. There are, of course, municipalities, as we all know, have their own governance, and the county has been given this opportunity to apply for these funds, not free, but to borrow the funds. And what the priorities or the way it's been asked for may be in reference to how we might have gone about this. But the way this commissioner looks at it is that the application, the way I understand it, is the application was required, number one, it had to be, the infrastructure had to be for economic development because of the source. The other concern that I thought we were looking at is that we had to get this done by a certain date. And then we had to indicate through the application process of what I've been understanding by listening here with the rest of you, from what's been brought to the podium and all the information we've had from John Chafee a couple of months ago, and from all those who have come before us, all of us together, is that it has to be a process, and this process is we find these different needs. The needs that this commissioner has been exposed to is the needs that Fremont and Pikeville and now Eureka are showing a need for infrastructure to create more of I think infrastructure for economic development with the 795 and with the issues with their sewer, their water bills that they've indicated that they're having to pay, sewer bills to the city of Goldsboro. In excess of 65 or 70, maybe it was $80,000 in 1 month due to some issues with their sewer. So just a comment on my end is that we have seen that the per capita income in these areas are low. in some areas more than others because of the age. The census is showing, and of course, the reports are showing that, in particular, the Fremont per capita income, fixed income, their age over the retirement age, and having to sustain their infrastructure there. So I just thought that this was getting together a group, and I hear from this Commissioner Mayo that he's out with a motion to put these three on. I think these three are the most needed. How we distribute the money, I guess that's up to the board, but from what I understand and what I'm looking at is that these three municipalities, one of them in particular is destitute by being told in September that this time next year, in September of this year, they're going to be broke. I'm just going on what their council and their mayor said. And I commend Mr. Mayo, Commissioner Mayo, for realizing that he'd been on the Eastern Region, and we heard it from Mr. Bell. I've heard it from 2 or 3 years. Commissioner Bell saying the money's there, we need to go get it, we need to get it, we need to borrow it, we need to use it. And all of a sudden, they're shutting down, and we're jumping out here. Mr. Mayo's championed this thing and got out there, and he's going after it. He's done all the legwork, and we did the legwork through our September meeting, Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners, and we've done that by listening to all the people who've come to the podium. So it's not about all this other, what I call stuff. It's about these people and these municipalities needing this money to get their issues fixed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cromartie.
If I understood correctly, the items could be used for economic development, and I think the Mount Olive folk have shown that this is a part of economic development in terms of certainly the runway rehabilitation. Has been time, money, everything, effort spent in the Mount Olive area to enhance economic development. The airport down there is one of them. They see this as a way to rehabilitate and give a kickstart, if you will, to an airport to make it somewhat comparable to what's already in the northern part of the county, so the southern part of the county can grow as well. And Mr. King, I wasn't making up what I said. I was just quoting what Mr. Mayo said. He said that a group, the county, the commissioners had decided that this would be the breakout. Mr. Bell indicated that he hadn't heard it, and I thought Mr. Darcher said that he hadn't been a part of it, and I know that I hadn't. So to come with these figures already designated as to who would get it, I can't help but sound like it was a decision already made before we got here, since you said that this is where we're going to decide it. So let's decide it here. Let's decide it here. We have municipalities right out here right now. I would be remiss if I didn't ask them to chime in to give us just a little bit of input on how you perceive your needs. If it's all right, Mr. Chairman.
Just to respond to Mr. Cromartie, it's not about we're making too much of this. It's about these projects that have been presented at this board. There's been no behind the scenes or group meetings, and I'm you know, wait a minute, Mr. Cromartie, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Stay in order, please.
Thank you. I mean, I can't help that, you know, these people came and presented their money issues and their needs, and they have, and there's record of that on that podium, and I'm sorry if there are some of those on the board that won't listen. Thank you.
Now, what Mr. King just said is completely wrong. We're talking about what Mr. Mayo said. Mr. Mayo said that some commissioners have already decided this is the way it's going to go. Yeah, you did. You said it right. She probably got it on record there, Mr. Mayo. And that's why I said I didn't know anything about it.
Mr. Chairman.
You didn't say that a few minutes ago that this is a decision that was made by some of the commissioners?
Go ahead and do your thing and let me reply, Mr. Chairman.
And not yet. And I said I didn't know anything about it, Mr. Mayo.
I said, Mr. Chairman, can I reply?
Mr. Mayor.
I said that the Board of Commissioners knew about it because of the last month of every meeting. We have come up here and we have made it clear what the standards are, what we were gonna do. We also agreed that today, I have made from this seat, I have said on several occasions, look at the minutes, that I knew we didn't have enough money to go around for everybody that had a presentation. But we needed to set the priority as a board. And we can set that priority. Now, the key is that, are you telling me that you had rather see a municipality, and look, 2 of these 3 municipalities have less than 5% in their fund balance, and you're telling me that you had rather see someone that don't actually need this money from the financial standpoint? Are you saying you'd rather see 2 of my municipalities close the doors and cease to be a municipality? Would you rather see that than rather than help them to survive? Everybody knew what we were supposed to do today. March the 1st is the deadline. I've been preaching this for a month. We have to have this application in March the 1st to the Eastern Region in order to get this money before the end of June, when the Eastern Region dissolves.
One final comment, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bell.
We are not talking about the money, we're talking about the idea that all of the commissioners were not on board with you making that motion long ago.
That's the purpose of us having a discussion.
We didn't have a discussion.
We're having it now. If you got someplace that you would like to go with a different motion, please do that. But how can you sit here and say that these 3 are not a priority as far as need? How can you say that?
I think you're missing the concept here.
Okay, well.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Doherty.
Just for clarity, it's my understanding that the March 1st deadline was flexible, that this was not a hard deadline, that we had to have the application in by March 1st, which, can council clarify that?
I can.
I think Mr. Mayo can as a member. And
Okay, what, the initial request for our part, the 576, they really want to have it by March the 1st, and that's sort of the deadline at the Eastern Region. And I'll tell you why. We have an Eastern Region meeting this coming Thursday, okay? And whatever applications they have, they will act on it. But you have to wait a month in order for the Eastern Region to meet again. So they came up with this idea of March the 1st. Now, if another county was to agree with Wayne County for us to borrow their funds, then we would have a little time, a couple or 3 week period in order to get that done, because that would have to be done straight between the 2 counties. But we're talking about the initial 576,000, the March 1st deadline is what they are asking for in order to get it.
And I do recall you saying they asked for it, but that was not a hard, fast deadline. They'd like to have it in there by March 1st, but if you ran a few weeks over, there wasn't going to be that big of an issue on it, because they had to actually have some decision made by the end of June. So we've got a lot of.
No, those funds have to be dispersed
By the end of June.
before the end of June, and
Well-
they need this time in order to get everything through the system. Because keep in mind, this is not the DMV funds that we got before that belongs to us. This is a loan from the state appropriation, so there is a much longer process. What they did say is that if we were gonna borrow money from another county, they realized it would take more time. But any county that's asking for their money, just their money, they would like to have it in by March 1st. And that was the details on that. Am I correct on that?
that is what I was told.
Okay. Thank you.
That's what Mr. Chafee, I think, has been telling you.
Mr. Brown, could I ask you a question? Yes, sir. For clarity. You had requested, Mount Olive had requested $200,000.
Yes, sir.
Would $100,000 suffice you or help you in any way?
That would help us tremendously. In fact, you asked me the question the day that I made the presentation, if you know, there weren't enough funds to go around. And I told you that I understood the needs for all the other municipalities. You know, they certainly have needs as well. And I told you that Mount Olive would certainly appreciate anything that the commission saw fit to you know, to share with us out of that portion of the money. And I think, and I've had this discussion too. The first part of the, you know, this money that came, you know, $352,000 of that went to the Goldsboro-Wayne Executive Jetport, which, and I understand they're still looking for a project, you know, to use that money for. We're sitting here with a project already shovel-ready. It's been designed, it's been engineered. We've gotten $1.5 million in funding from the state, and we're looking for a way to match those funds. And in answer to your question, yes, sir, $100,000 would be a huge help. But
Would you be able to put the other $100,000 with it to go ahead and get that grant? That's the
yes, sir.
question.
Yes, we could do that. If we could, you know, we could put the rest of the money together to do it. Thank you.
Hey,
Charles,
Charles.
I'm sorry, Mr. Brown.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Brown.
Sorry.
Does Mount Olive have less than 8% of the state statute in their fund balance?
No, sir.
Okay, that's all.
What is it?
Okay.
What is it?
But
What is it?
never mind.
What is your fund balance?
What else did you have to say, Mr.?
Well, I was just going to say and maybe I misunderstood the purpose of the money. My understanding was it was for economic development, and I, you know, it somehow doesn't seem fair to penalize someone because of efficient management, I guess I would say. You know, in other words, we worked really hard. 5 years ago, if you'd asked me that question, I would have said yes, sir. In fact, I think 5 years ago we probably had a negative fund balance. We're fortunate today that we do have a fund balance and we're financially sound. But that was not my impression when they said economic development. It was not my impression that that was the purpose of the funds. So.
Mr.
Thank you.
I wish to amend, place an amendment of the motion, and that is to approve the funding as stated by the motion with a reduction on the amount to Fremont by the amount of $100,000, and that amount be designated to Mount Olive.
Any more discussion?
One more, Mr. Chairman.
Mayor?
I have worked with Fremont untold hours to get the very minimum that they need here. This is not a figure that's been pulled out of the air. There's many hours being put into this. And you heard Ms. Aycock bring to this board in her presentation where she's at financially. And this $305,244 is the very minimum that she needs in order to pull herself out. And they are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, but they just need a jump start here to get them back on stream. And I've said all along that if we can help these municipalities stay as a municipality, it's much cheaper than Wayne County in the long run.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. King, comment on the amendment, discussion on the amendment. This morning, we have shown that in less than 30 days, we can give and take. With the school board, we've accomplished 5 of their projects on the capital improvement plan in less than 30 days on their capital improvement plan. I just think that's admirable for this board. I feel for the municipalities. And all of those people live in the county. We don't live in the municipalities, but all of those people live in the county. and they have county tax too. I appreciate that. But this morning, we've learned to give and take. And first of all, let the commissioners know that I haven't gone behind closed doors. I've just listened to Ms. Saycock and the mayor. And I've been to some meetings out there and listened to them. They've asked me to go, and I've sat in and heard their issues. And in September, we certainly heard it loud and clear of last year. But I'd like to support the amendment, because what that does is really, I know that they need the 305, 244, but 200 is better. 200 is better than nothing. 75,000 has come up with pipe. I've seen the pictures of the water tank, and I've got the, we heard pipe for last time. But Eureka came out where they needed 200,000, and I think Eureka, because they're connected with Fremont, and really Fremont Pikeville and Eureka, they form that triangle up north. I believe they're going to be able to get through this. I believe this is going to be a huge help for them, and I agree with Mount Olive. Fremont Pikeville, Eureka, they don't have a university, but they do have an interstate. It comes right by them, just like Mount Olive. And yes, I was commissioner in that district 5 years ago, whenever, before they redistricted in Mount Olive, and I knew of the issues at that time, and I commend you for managing Mount Olive and getting Mount Olive, Mr. Brown, and the mayor and the councilman, and all that the citizens do in Mount Olive to get Mount Olive back as the shining star that it is today. But this money certainly doesn't need to disrupt the, Mr. Chairman and fellow commissioners, doesn't need to disrupt the collaboration with what I said a while ago is stuff, because a few of the comments a while ago to me were offensive because they were just stuff, and it was a distraction of what is really needed here in these 4 municipalities that have asked for money. So don't let this money become a distraction for this board that we start throwing darts or mud, and we can't get together and collaborate to bring one another together and get these 4 municipalities and move on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. King. Anyone else? Just a minute. I've sometimes been criticized for not speaking up enough as a board member. And I certainly agree with what Mr. Mayo says, Mr. King, and the rest of the board. Mr. Mayo works very hard for the residents and the municipalities in his district. Mr. Bell does, Mr. Cromartie does. But all these municipalities is in my district. So sometimes it puts me in kind of an awkward position, and I just want to go on record that I want to support Mr. Daugherty's amendment, simply for the fact that I'm accountable to everybody in the county, which all of y'all are too, even though you're elected in districts, but we're all accountable. I just want to go on record that I support Mr. Daugherty's amendment. Any other discussion? Have a Marshall read the motion back out, the amendment back out to us, please.
To approve the funding and Commissioner E. Ray Mayo's motion with a reduction from Fremont in the amount of $100,000, which will be given to the town of Mount Olive.
Okay, y'all all heard the motion.
Could I amend that to where it be loaned to the town of Mount Olive?
Change made.
I got a question.
Mr. King.
This being a loan, the rate and structure of how to manage this money once it comes to us, though it has to come through us, how are we to set that rate and manage those funds with this motion as we move forward?
It'll be up to the board to make that decision.
So right now, I understand that these 4 projects are going on the application to quantify?
Yeah,
To quantify,
Yeah,
is that
qualify
right?
to the
To
eastern
qualify
Yeah.
to the eastern region, is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yes, that's
Okay, and then
correct.
when it comes to us, then we have to,
Make,
decide.
set the policies for the loans, that's
okay,
correct.
okay.
'Cause
All right, thank you.
We as a county are, excuse me, can I say something?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We as a county are borrowing the money from the eastern region, and then we're gonna let the other municipalities borrow from the county. So we set whatever interest rate we want or whatever, at the time that, this comes up. Was the motion to take away the $100,000 from Fremont, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
What about if that needs to shift, say from, let's say Eureka decides that they don't need some of theirs, can the board take this money and shuffle it if we need to between Fremont and Eureka? Because Fremont has really been forceful on the fact that this is the minimum that they need, and I understand there's give and take here, but can we have the flexibility of maybe, if Eureka don't need but 100,000, can I shift, could the board shift 100,000 of that back to Fremont, if that's where the need is?
Mr. Parker, I think you would probably have to answer that, and also, Mr. Mayor, I mean, you've been to the Eastern Region meetings, I mean, I can't answer that question.
Well,
Mr.
since
Parker,
the
can you,
since the
or
county-
finance?
Well, since the county's borrowing the money, then it would be up to the county commissioners if we could shift that. Am I correct?
Right, and of course, the municipalities are going to have to get the permission of the LGC to borrow the money from the county, and if you're putting in one that can't get that permission, then you're gonna have money that needs to go somewhere else.
That's right.
Once it's been loaned to you and you get it in your hands,
Right.
I don't think the Eastern Region's gonna care anymore.
Mr. Chairman, I asked John Chafee directly that very question when we were in Morehead City, and he said yes, that we could make that decision later after we do receive the dollars, as long as they stay in the economic development realm.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
Then, I know we have a motion on the floor and an amendment, but with this being said, do we need to either pass either one of them, or just request the money and then discuss distributing it, or do you want to leave the motion and the amendment like it is?
Have to satisfy the Eastern Region that the requests are economic development, for economic development. So I think that you're going to need to have those listed.
Okay,
We
okay.
will have to list them on the application.
Just want to clarify it.
Okay.
Okay, we have a amendment on the floor. Any other discussion?
Yes, sir.
Mr. King?
Being that you're shifting money now, don't want to cloud the water as it goes forward, because it is going to depend on votes of how to move the money around if you're talking about shifting, because you said it's up to the board to do that. So if you bring Mount Olive in the fix with 100,000, what's to keep them from advocating for more than 100? And if Eureka doesn't use it, the board votes to shift it to Mount Olive instead of Fremont. Should we go in today and deciding the figures? Let's just make it clear in this motion that we know what to put on the application, but within the board, make it clear that if Fremont doesn't need or can't qualify, then Eureka may need more or Pikeville need more. So we're starting to get muddy a little bit, because you're talking about shifting funds
Right.
in the future without it being on paper. And if it doesn't come today, wait a second, if it doesn't come today as numbers to be allocated to these particular municipalities, then I don't want it to get in a fuss 2 months out, 3 months out, who gets what. That was my part of the discussion. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay, so, the motion would be, as a matter of fact, do I need to just,
Would you change your motion to include my amendment?
Yes.
Well, okay.
Well, all right,
And
you
if
need-
you'll change your motion to my amendment, then I will withdraw the
And we
amendment.
can also put figures here now, okay?
That's correct.
Fremont would be $205,244.71.
205, 205 what?
205, 244.71. We're giving 100,000 to Mount Olive, is that correct?
Yeah, the number I had was 301 to start off with. Where'd you come up with
No,
that
this,
other number?
this,
They changed that amount. They swapped the
changed.
grapple truck for a wastewater.
you got it in your.
All right, so we'll go over here then.
There it
All
is.
right.
Yeah. See, what they did is they took the grapple truck out and put another
Okay.
project in there. So, so you would have Pikeville at 75,000, Eureka at 200,000, and then Mount Olive at 100,000. And we're gonna have to adjust that to where it comes out to 576, 923.08.
That's a reduction of 3,321.63.
Still across the board.
That's a reduction of three,
You need to make a reduction of $3,321.63 to be exact penny of what's on the available for loan.
all right, who's gonna give that up?
But let's take that off of Eureka, because I think maybe they got a little fudge factor in it.
Okay.
Could
So
take
what's
care
that
of
new number now if we take it away from Eureka? 100,
196, 678.37.
30.
That's off the top of my head. Something like that.
Okay.
Mr. Proctor.
I've got a question here.
May I make a suggestion, sir?
Yes, sir.
I'm Blake Proctor with the town of Pikeville. In Fremont's defense, what I'd like to make as a suggestion, instead of taking the full 100 out of Fremont, because they need $255,000 for financing and $50,000 for our new lift station repairs. Take $50,000 for lift station repairs, leave the $255,000 for the refinancing that they're needing. That is their, from what I understand, that's their most needed activity. And then take the other $50,000 out of Eureka, and it would be 147,000 approximately, 148,000 for Eureka, 100,000 for Mount Olive, and so the 50,000's come out of two accounts rather than just all out of Fremont, because I can see Fremont's need. That's just a suggestion from the peanut gallery.
Yeah, you just confused me 100%. Oh, I'm just kidding.
Do both of
I
y'all,
am an accountant, so-
do both of y'all want to withdraw your motion and start all over, or, I mean, Mr. Darty's already withdrew his motion.
Yeah, we just need to update the figures, so can somebody help us out? That's
Can you
all.
I can help you out.
Okay.
Is that taking into account the suggestion?
No, we're
about
going
a
to stick
pipe?
with the original.
Okay. The figures, as were stated, is Fremont 205, 244.71. Mount Olive, 100,000. Pikeville, 75,000. Eureka, 196, 678.37.
That's in the form of a motion.
I like Mr. Proctor's suggestion. He
Yeah.
knows better than any of us. He's a professional at it.
Well, that's the reason I wanted to get these figures down, because I do know that, and I appreciate you doing that, Mr. Proctor. That's a good suggestion. Fremont is really the one out of the tree here, as far as the northern end of the county, that really needs some help. So what we're saying is that we would take, how much did you say you're gonna give up, Mr. Proctor?
I'm not giving up anything.
Oh, okay. Where'd you say we're gonna take it?
I just gave up lunch.
Eureka, you said?
Yeah, 50,000 out of Eureka.
Okay.
And 50,000 out of Fremont. There's the 100,000. And Fremont keeps its, I'm sorry. And Fremont keeps its, the 205,000, or 255,000 that it requires for the refinancing.
Yeah.
They'd have to just forego the upgrade to the,
Lift station.
yeah.
Okay, so 200, would that be some change there? We're looking at 50,000 minus 3 from 3.
If you did what he suggested, it would take Fremont to 255, 244.71. It'd take Eureka to 146, 678.37.
Say again, please.
It would take Fremont to 255, 244.71.
Yeah.
It would take Eureka to 146, 678.37.
Okay. Then Pikeville will be at 75, and Mount Olive will be at 100. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Let's make that in form of a motion, okay?
Withdraw your other motion first.
I withdraw my previous motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, now restate your motion and.
Please don't ask me to restate it.
Have the figure so Ms. Marshall can get it in the minutes.
There's no way in the world I can do it
Pam
now.
will help you.
If you want to.
Before you read that back, Mr. Chairman, could we get Mr. Brown to say whether Mount Olive will use their $100,000 for just the runway or for the lighting? I think he had put in two different things, and I think in the motion, and then, well, particularly in the resolution going to the eastern region, it would be good to know.
Runway.
Just for the runway, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ms. Marshall, you coming up with it?
I assume your motion also wants to include the resolution, is that correct? For Fremont, $255,244.71. For Eureka, $146,000. No, I've got that wrong.
146, 678.37.
140.
146, 678, 37.
146, 678.37. For Mount Olive, $100,000. For Pikeville, $75,000.
Okay, sounds good.
And the resolution.
We have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? All in favor, show of sign by right hand. Motion carries unanimous.
It's like splitting the baby.
Mr. Chairman, do I need to read this resolution?
I think it's
I don't need
necessary.
to? Okay, all right.
Thank you, gentlemen. Y'all make
Appreciate
Solomon,
it.
you make Solomon proud.
No charge for the consultant.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so
We had you
much.
75,000. It's good
I
collaboration.
go to lunch.
Scott, leave.
He was sick, I'm sure.
Let's skip about again. We got people here from the state park, from the cliffs. Let's go ahead and take care of those, and
Good idea.
then we'll go back up to the Reedy Branch. Well, there he is, but.
Flip a coin. Your call.
Yeah,
No,
they're in
I've-
uniform.
I've already.
They got a gun.
I've already made a decision, and like you said, they took the gun, so they're next.
Okay, I'll start it.
Okay. Good afternoon. We were, being the county, were approached several months ago by the representatives of the Cliff. They were interested in establishing a boat landing on the Neuse River north of or upstream from the Cliff to the Neuse Park. The site is 2 lots that the county currently owns off of River Road that were acquired in 2000, 2001. Previously had dwellings on the property. Property is currently vacant. It is purchased using FEMA and state money. Cliffs of the Neuse Park is interested in taking ownership of that property. Property to be transferred from the county to the state to establish a boat landing for canoe launching on that property. Got representatives from the Cliffs here. if you'd like to ask them questions.
Any questions from the commissioners to the staff of State Park?
How quickly are you going to have construction started?
Well, I'm Ed Wilkerson, by the way, Superintendent at Clifton New State Park. And these are our three rangers, Candace Rose, Crystal Lloyd, Autumn Kale. What Connie said, I don't know how many specifics you guys were given on the whole proposal, but the two lots together measure 2.8 acres. The property is right just north and below Broadhurst Bridge. And the park, is, all of you know, I'm sure, has been there for 69 years. The park has never had a safe, viable place where the public can launch a boat. And when I say boat, it would be kayaks and canoes only, based upon the stipulations that FEMA puts on these properties. They don't want to see too much expansion, too much hardening of structures or any buildings erected. It would just be kept in its natural condition with state park signage and state park supervision, just to allow the state park to expand its recreational opportunities for people to float the 5.7 miles down to the state park and then continue on to the 2 miles down to the wildlife ramp at Seven Springs. So that's our interest in it, because for lo these many years, the park's never had a place where we could say, this is a legitimate, safe, viable place to put your boats in, enjoy a day on the Neuse River, and then either come to the park and camp or continue on and go to Seven Springs and take out. The closest ramp upriver back toward town is, all of you know also, is 581 Sam Casey Bridge. But putting in at that ramp lengthens the trip by almost 6 miles on the river. And then it turns it into, from a morning or an afternoon or a day trip, it turns into something that really requires a lot of logistics to even be able to make it down to Seven Springs in a one-day course. So that's our interest in this property. So,
Thank you for your comments. And I'll give y'all a chance just a minute, but I'm glad you did point out the boat ramp at Seven Springs, because really I had not visualized it. I mean, I'm familiar with with the area and all, but I'm glad that you brought that up, because and to me now it makes more sense to have a boat ramp up at Broadhurst Bridge.
Sure.
And be able to take out at Seven Springs, because
and they'll be able to take out on the park also.
Right.
If they want to come up and hike, take a break, or even camp overnight. But basically, the whole recreational component of the park, hiking, camping, use of the swim lake, this would greatly enhance the opportunities not only to visitors for the state, but as most of you know also, 50% of our user base comes from the local counties where we're located. So that, of course, is Wayne. So this would be a tremendous boost in recreation potential for the citizens of Wayne County also.
anyone else, Mr. Daugherty?
Are you friends with the head of the North Carolina Bureau of Prisons? We'll trade you these 2 acres for.
I'm just joking. Need another side.
You want it.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the transfer of the 2 tracts of land to the state of North Carolina.
Sure.
With the same restrictions that FEMA required you to have on them, and to void the lease with
Doug Coffey.
Doug Coffey, excuse me, looking for his name.
With those provisions.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Have any other discussion? No other discussion. All in favor, show of sign of right hand. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
But if you happen to know that.
Okay, I will mention it.
We're going to go ahead and give you the land in advance.
Okay. We thank you so much.
Got to have a little levity here.
All right, let's move back up to Reedy Branch Greenway Grant Agreement.
Yeah, while we're on a recreation theme, walking and paddling, we'll continue on with that. Several months ago, early last year, the county had the opportunity at that time to apply for a grant from the state parks to build a greenway on the north side of Goldsboro. The grant has finally been funded, and we have received a proposed contract from the state that would need to be signed by the chairman and sent back. The grant was for $200,000. The local match would be in-kind contributions from my time, Scott Warner's time with the city, Pam's time in the finance, and the money coming through the county. The city would be responsible for actually overseeing the construction of the trail, and we have received today a proposed agreement from the city where they would guarantee they would be responsible for ongoing maintenance of the trail once it's built. Up on the screen, you can see where in the red line is where the trail was built. It starts on the north end there by the Goldsboro Worship Center in front of their property there at Hare Road, where the trail ends now along New York Road, continue westwardly along New York Road, cross Stony Creek, and then continue to the south behind the community college, all across city and county on property, and behind the Wayne Memorial Hospital. I guess where it joins up with the existing trail at that point.
Well, it adjoins where we have a trailhead for the permit. Oops, excuse me. By the way, I'm Scott Barner, Parks and Recreation Director. Where it ties in behind the hospitals, where we have an agreement with the hospital to provide trailhead access. So for use of their parking lot, and they'll provide signage, et cetera, and that'll be an access point for trail users.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve this and allow it to move forward. Just appreciate the city doing what they're doing and all that is going on here to increase our availability for this type of recreation, safety, and all that you're doing. I just really appreciate it. I ask that the board approve this. And again, I'm just glad that we can afford the in-kind contribution from our county with our GIS and our planning and our personnel. We are very fortunate in Goldsboro or Wayne County, as you know, that we have the ability to have a good planning department that's able to stand in the gap whenever the city or anyone else comes asking for us. I'm just really happy that we can do this. We just make a motion that we move forward with it.
Have a motion on the floor. Any discussion?
Commissioner King, would you add that the chairman is authorized to sign the agreement?
Mr. Doherty.
In looking at the map here, you've got the red line at the top of here along New Hope Road, but that trail actually currently exists coming on back around past Culver Best Road. Is that correct? You've got a walking, not a walking trail, but
Yes. It's a
multi-use?
Multi-use path, I guess what they call it.
Yes, sir. It'll tie into exactly where the other one drops
So
off.
it will tie in there.
Yes, sir.
And with the bond that the city is going forth with,
Yes, sir.
that you're a proponent of, I'm sure. But anyway,
I'm a non-advocate.
my question is, the soccer fields and so forth that you all are planning on building, isn't that somewhere around Culver Best Road?
It's not.
Oh, it's not.
You know, we explored some sites up there, and we even explored the site where the city owns or jointly owns maybe some property that had planned to be a convention center. But the site that we've settled on is actually on base property off of Forest Road, Forest Hills Road, excuse me.
Oh, okay.
Too many forests.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, the base also, I'm glad you said that too, is that the base is looking at their J-Lou study that they're beginning to put together. They'll be looking for areas like this that enhance the quality of life for their troops, and we're just glad that Seymour Johnson's a part of it also in the planning process.
This
Thank
will
you.
connect with the trail that winds back toward the family wire.
Yes, sir.
Correct. And eventually on down to the Cliffs of the News eventually.
All ties in.
Mr. Parker, you have read an okay the agreement with the city to,
City's gonna hold the county harmless. I'm very pleased with it.
okay, all right, that was my question.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? We have a motion on the floor. All in favor of the motion, so sign the right hand. Motion carries unanimous.
Thank y'all.
Thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thanks.
Hope you feel better.
Price, Fieldstone Village preliminary subdivision.
Yes, sir. This is a 86 lot subdivision at the intersection of Combs Road and Stony Creek Church Road in Stony Creek Township. All of the lots are interior lots, which means there will be no lots fronting on either one of the existing secondary roads. All the lots meet the minimum lot size for the zoning in that area, which is RA 20. They're all at least 20,000 square feet or bigger. We'll have two entrances on the secondary roads, one Bunning Drive going on to Combs Road and Carew Drive going onto Stony Creek Church Road. Planning Board has reviewed the request and it recommends that it be approved as presented.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. King.
I asked a question in the preliminary agenda this morning on these preliminary plans. What school district this is in, is indicating that it was in the northeastern school district?
Yes, the ACOC, Norway Northeast.
Norway, okay.
Yes.
And has the school been informed, or they been part of this information?
They were provided a copy of the preliminary during the review process. I've not heard anything from them, but they are aware of the project.
And a follow-up question too, Mr. Chairman. The development, will it be in phases? Has the developer given any indication that if, will they be doing this in a phase 1 or phase 2? Because it's preliminary, and coming with a final, he'd have to have all of it done, is that correct?
If he did all of it as the whole 86 lots as a final, then all of it would have to be done as you see here. If it's in phases, he could have off of Carew Drive, do the streets along that as a phase. He could do, with 86 lots, he could do 5 lots as a phase, 20 lots as a phase. It's his call on that.
Okay.
What we would make sure on is that as he develops the property, if he doesn't build his interconnectivity on both streets at the same time, that there are adequate turnarounds. If he starts his street, doesn't provide a place at the end of the street to turn around, there'd be at least a temporary turnaround at the end of that street that would be removed once the street's extended.
Right.
But he would have to meet all of the other infrastructure requirements, the paved streets, water lines, the fire hydrants, as he develops each phase.
Thank you.
Mr. Price is a former planning board member. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when these come in, they you automatically send a copy to the school board, the sanitary districts.
Yes.
And if it's pertaining to the base, they also get it. So all the proper.
Right. We have several agencies that we send it to. As you mentioned those, we also send it to our cooperative extension. They get a copy of it. We send it to, it seems like there's another one, but then after the fact, after it is approved and we've done the addressing, then at that point, we'll send it to the power companies, cable TV, telephone company, the post office then, on how the addressing works.
Mr. Chairman.
DOT, and I'm sorry, that's correct, Mr. Parker's mentioned DOT, and on this, just so you'll know, if you'll see Stargill Drive, I believe is the one that runs right there, and you'll see how it comes down to a T and it stops. Initially, they had it coming out to Combs Road. DOT suggested that they not come out there, that street be stopped, or they just use the 2 entrances that they have. They were concerned about it being that close to that intersection. And so the developer agreed to redesign and make that T intersection you see at the corner of Stargill and Larkin.
I move approval.
I have a motion on the floor that we approve this plot. Any other discussion? No other discussion. All in favor, show sign of right hand. Thank you, Mr. Price. Presentation of January 31st, 2014 financial information. Ms. Holt.
I am pleased to present the financial report for the period ending January 31st, 2014. I want to emphasize that this report is based on the first 7 months of the fiscal year 2013-14. This report details the cash, the revised budget, the actual revenues or expenditures, and the percentage of actual to budget, comparing the same period last year to the same period this year. The cash invested for the county as of January 31st, 2014 was $107,826,457.26. The next section on this report is the general fund revenues and expenditures. The general fund is the fund that includes the calculations we speak of when we refer to our fund balance. I do want to note I'm presenting this as of January 31st. That means that the total revenues and your total cash is at the highest point for the fiscal year. This is when your taxes have been collected and they begin to support the rest of your fiscal year. As of January 31st, the revenues exceeded the expenditures by $20,695,099.84. As compared to the revenues over expenditures for January 31st, 2013 of $20,162,544.98. As you'll note, you're about the same point revenues over expenditures as of January 31st this year as you were last year. Current taxes for this year are $42,946,438.80, or 95.09% of budget. We have collected 83.12% of the delinquent budgeted taxes. We have collected 62.30% of budgeted vehicle taxes, or $3,476,966.88. Just a reminder here, the state has implemented the new DMV software system this year, so you have additional 4 months of revenue in this year, one time only, not in last year's numbers, and they will not be in next year's numbers. Delinquent vehicle taxes are $611,852.69. The next revenues are your local sales tax revenues for Wayne County. Just a reminder, we currently have 3 sales tax articles. Article 39, which is a 1% sales tax. Article 40, which is a 1/2 cent sales tax. 30% of this Article 40 is shared with the school system. We have Article 42, which is a 1/2 cent sales tax, and 60% of Article 42 is shared with the school system. We have collected about 57.48% of budget for all the articles combined as of January 31. The collection for July through January this year totals $9,403,705.85, compared to $9,287,732.80 for the same period the prior year, an increase of $115,973.05. Just as a reminder, we had for the last 6 years, our lowest fiscal year was the 10-11 year. The next section details the major county expenditures and provides a summary of the activity and status of each function. Services on aging. Revenues are at 46.84% and expenditures are at 38.73%. Wayne County Development Allowance. Revenues are at 57.59% and expenditures are at 58.54%. Public Assistance, or DSS. Revenues are at 51.92% and expenditures are at 51.10%. Public Health. Revenues are at 51.50% and expenditures are at 51.10%. Right now, these are all running pretty close, aren't they? The Reval Fund. Revenues are $115,667 and expenditures are at $21,125. This is a reserve fund that the mandatory funds are transferred as required by the statutes to fund the estimated cost of the next reappraisal. The funds, all funds for the year has been transferred in there as of this point, and the revenues will not be going up for the year, so that's why you see a difference there. Emergency telephone. Revenues are at 33.78%, and expenditures are at 47.85%. Then we have selected county capital projects. The total spent on the radio system so far is $10,800,593.88. The total spent on the Steele Memorial Library as of January 31st was $931,270.43. EMS. Revenues are $3,133,824.93, and expenditures are at $3,322,600.16. Solid waste. Revenues are at $2,762,197.73. Expenditures are at $1,944,322.72. One of these differences in why your revenues are higher this year than our expenditures are less is that we were in the process of building that third cell last year. Sewer. Revenues are at 36.13% and expenditures are at 65.45%. We had some equipment cost in the beginning of the year. MS Net. Revenues are at 48.15% and expenditures are at 49.11%. Airport. Revenues are at 57.01% and expenditures at 53.31%. The Workers' Comp Self-Insurance Fund has a cash balance of $1,637,101.12. The Hospitalization Fund has a cash balance of $2,183,271.55.
Any questions for Mr. King?
Are the department heads sent notices from your department when the expenditures exceed the revenues in reference to percentages?
It depends on, you have different situations with each department. You know, you could have revenues coming in at the beginning of the year. You have some of the departments that get them monthly. You have quarterly. So it just depends. I actually track them. I have a system set so that it says when the revenues are to come in, whether on a monthly, semi-annually, annual basis. And I'm watching them as they go. If there is a discrepancy I feel out there, I do contact them.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Daugherty?
I'm correct, this is for 7 months,
7 months.
which is 58% of the year.
Yes, sir.
So in other words, if I'm looking at these percentages, then we should be tracking at 58% on expenses and 58% of budgeted amount.
Well, you would have to take into consideration the question that Mr. King just gave me. It depends on when your revenues came in. It also depends on when your expenditures. You know, some of our departments, when they get their capital request, they spend it in July. And some of them will wait until, you know, later on in the spring. So, I mean, there's variances always.
Well, I'm pleased to see that the current vehicle taxes have gone up dramatically in comparison to last year. On current vehicle, it was 2.49, almost 2.5 million as of January 2013, and this year it's right at $1 million more.
Now, that's what I brought that to your attention, that we have 4 extra months this year. They changed to that new vehicle system. There was a lag because of that new vehicle system, that we had 4 months that we had. It's a double whammy. We got 2 payments, one from the new system and one from the old system. And that was 4 extra payments that we got in this fiscal year that we won't have in next year. So that's why you see that tremendous upswing this year. So when you're doing your budget next year, I won't be coming to you at this high amount. I'll be coming to you with an amount that's closer to the prior years.
All right, and the other question that I have, which kind of stands out at me, and that is you're showing as this year versus last year that revenues and expenditures that the difference is roughly the same. $20 million revenue over or expenditures. 20.1 in January 2013 and 20.6 for this. So we're 400 or so thousand, a little over that. But the number that's really striking is that the cash invested amount. Cash invested amount went from 102 to 107. So that was $5 million additional that was in cash invested, those in reserves.
And that is a little bit confusing, but I'll try to explain that. This is, when I'm comparing, I'm saying this is the cash balance as of January 31st, 2014. This is the cash balance as of January 31st, 14 versus 13.
Sure.
Okay, you still got those months that change between there. So what happens is how much were your revenues and expenditures really over at the end of the prior fiscal year, which we were up in the general fund close to between $4 and $5 million. So that brought your beginning balance for the 13-14 year cash up over last year. So it's not telling you that you've collected more this year. It's taking more into account the prior year's cash revenues over expenditures.
So, making sure that I'm not clarity. So what you're saying is there were dollars that were left over from the previous budget that flowed over. You could transfer those on over as of July the 1st of
Correct.
This year, this
Correct.
fiscal year. Is that correct?
So that cash moves forward. Whatever your revenues or expenditures were in the prior fiscal year starts your next year
Right.
either better or worse.
Oh, yeah.
So even though you're comparing month to month prior this year versus prior, you've still got other months to take in consideration between those two
Understood.
comparisons.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Keith. Anyone else? Ms. Hope, quick question. On the vehicle, the percentage-wise, once we get into a full year of the new program, shouldn't that percentage go up from 62%? Aren't they predicting something like a 90%, 90-some percent?
Yes, that's the good part. We were, as finance directors, we were required not to use the 100%. Or close to it. We're saying 99, 98.5, we're supposed to really get it all in, pretty much. But we had to budget at the audited prior year figure of collections that we used when we budgeted. So probably, if I am going to should end up collecting more than I budgeted. And so when I budget next year, I will get to use a higher percentage. So maybe it will not be quite as big a hit on your budget. That's what we're hoping. But we'll have to go through, when we're budgeting, I'm not going to have complete 12 months of history. We'll still have just a little gray area that we're trying to estimate on there. But it won't be as big a hit as if you had used the same percentage in both years.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, what Ms. Hope was saying about your cash invested, she was saying the technical and legal that money was going to have to carry you through the rest of this fiscal year because you have gotten most of your revenue from your ad valorem taxes already. But what in reality is it's going to have to carry you probably through the middle of next fall as well because your new tax rate, whatever it is, isn't even due until the 1st of September, and it's not past due until about the 6th of January of the following year. So you need, it really legally has to carry you through this fiscal year, but practically it's going to have to carry you further.
We wasn't going to spend it all next week.
It really takes you almost through November. We don't see the taxes start, really coming in until the middle of November.
Right, and you mentioned tax rate, so it's whatever is established at the budget for tax rate to carry us for the next 6 months, July 1 to December.
Anyone else? Thank you, Ms. Hope. We need to go back into closed session again, but do y'all want to make the Board of Commissioners comments first, or do that after we come back? whatever pleasure the board is.
Let's do that after we come back.
Everyone in agreement? Yeah. All right. Do I have a motion that we go into closed session?
So moved.
Have a
Be to
motion?
consider the qualifications, competence of prospective public officer or employee.
I have a motion on the floor. All in favor, show a sign of right hand. Any closed session?